I welcome you all to the national webinar on safeguarding forest and wildlife during COVID-19 lockdown issues and challenges. It gives me immense pleasure to inform you all that Law Center 1 is celebrating 50 years of its excellence this year. And today's webinar is an integral part of our year-long celebrations. We at Law Center 1 educate our students to be mindful of their duty to protect and conserve our environment, which is a fundamental duty of all citizens of this country. We organize international and national conferences, seminars, and lectures on environment issues to enhance our knowledge in this area. We conduct plantation drives, street plays, and outreach programs to spread awareness regarding environment protection amongst our students and through them to sensitize the common people. Even in this pandemic situation, we are guided by this intent to protect and conserve our environment, which is well reflected in the theme of our webinar today, linking the pandemic of COVID-19 and safeguarding forest and wildlife. The webinar today will primarily focus on forest and wildlife management, linking it with legal issues, importance of conservation of wildlife including birds, human-animal conflict, insect pollinators, and environment impact assessment. With these words, I warmly welcome Mr. Sunayan Sharma, President, Sariska Tiger Foundation and ex-Indian Forest Serviceman. Sir, we are honored to have you here with us in this webinar.
Thank you. I am obliged.
Yes.
We have the privilege of welcoming Mr. Govind Sagar Bharadwaj, Additional Principal Chief Conservator of Forest, Rajasthan. I warmly welcome you, Mr. Bharadwaj.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. This is my privilege.
We have the pleasure of having with us Mr. Pushp Jain. He has recently retired from Legal Initiative for Forest and Environment in Delhi. He has been associated with many institutes for wide-ranging projects related to forest and environment. So I heartily welcome you, Mr. Jain.
Thank you. Thank you.
Indeed, it's my pleasure to extend hearty welcome to distinguished participants, learned colleagues, and dear students. I congratulate student volunteers, entire seminar committee of Law Center 1, especially Dr. Pushp Kumar, convener seminar committee, and Dr. Vikesh Tripathi, program director, for organizing this webinar.
Thank you, ma'am.
I warmly welcome all of you once again. May we all live more and thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Vikesh?
Thank you, sir. In fact, when we conceptualized this entire idea to organize the webinar, was, see, the post-COVID recovery, basically the economic recovery when the government is going. See, India is now we are in a stage of global village. So we are facing a labor migration. See, so the forest as well as the wildlife inside the forest are going to have indirect, the sufferer of it. There's a linkage, direct linkage, indirect linkages with regard to this, because see, this migration of labor surely going to be depend upon so many. There are directly and indirectly activities on forest as well as on the wildlife. There will be suddenly there is a report from World Economic Forum that poaching is going to be increased. In fact, from Rajasthan, the reports are coming. They are reportable in the media that during this period, this lockdown period, the poaching has been increased because of the lacks of certain anti-poaching devices as well as the other paraphernalia not available during this COVID-19 period. Apart from this, we definitely have to be going to have a pressure over the wildlife as well as the forests while recovering this. So there will be a certain other challenges that will be emerging during this recovery period, not only with the humanity but also the flora and fauna living inside the forest as well as the wildlife. So this entire webinar is being organized with this object that we have an expert speakers over the topic who has been done number of years. Really, they have faced the challenges. They have really aware of the issues before this that was happening on this forest conservation as well as wildlife. So with this webinar is basically have a distinguished speaker in the form of Mr. Sunayan Sharma, who happened to be an ex-Indian Forest Serviceman who served almost 30 years in the Forest Department of Rajasthan. He started his wildlife warden at Jodhpur, looking after 7 districts of Western Rajghat during 1986 to 98. He was basically instrumental in putting a halt to about 450 marble mining operations within and periphery of the Tiger Reserve. Furthermore, so was in 2006. See, the Keola Dev Ghana, our world heritage, was facing a lot of tremendous problems. Serious threat was there. Even at a time there was a threat that this heritage status was going to be taken by the UNESCO. So therefore, in this crisis, the source has entered, and very beautifully, almost 305-kilometer water canal was constructed under your leadership. And apart from years, almost it was 2 years before retiring in 2008, the translocation of the tigers in the Sariska. That was another wonderful management was which it was impact in the not only in India but entire history of wildlife. Such a mass level of translocation of tigers was done under your leadership. We have the another distinguished speaker in the form of, I would say now, Dr. Gobind Sagar Bharadwaj. Sir has done his PhD from University of Rajasthan, and he joined basically the Indian Forest Services in 1994 as a manager of natural resources. And so, how I keep on listening and in fact reading the way you have handled the situations at Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, and see, you have contributed a lot while conserving the forest and wildlife there. So apart from, you have a contribution in the form of tracking the tigers in Ranthambore, authored book done by you. Of course, you have done a PhD on a topic that itself relates to the wildlife and forest conservation, the plant resources utilization by the avian fauna in Sita Mela Wildlife Sanctuary, sir. So that's another contribution. Apart from this, sir, we remember this story, I tell you. In fact, every wildlife activist, when he enters Rajasthan, the way you saved the village as well as the tiger, and for that you have been awarded the state award in 1999 in the state of Rajasthan. So definitely this webinar is going to be benefited because of experience and your own the issue and the challenges which you are going to be raised. And the last speaker would be in the form of Pushpas Jain, sir, having served your Project Tiger status report, sir. See that reports, the way you compiled and the edited all these things. Apart from this, the Sikh Yamuna and Sikh Delhi sites in India. In report, I would be requesting you to be talk about your this Project Tiger status report. With this introduction of the concept as well as the guest, I will over to the Pushp Kumar with the request to be let us start with the further proceedings.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Vikesh Tripathi, for setting the tone here for the program. I, on behalf of Law Center 1, Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, on behalf of all our students and the faculty members, I would like to invite and welcome all our distinguished panelists for the program once again. And really, we are fortunate that, we have the real, experts who have worked in the field as our resource persons here as panelists. And it's very diverse. And, diverse as well as, they have commonalities. Two of our speakers, Mr. Sunayan Sharma ji and Dr. Gobind, Bharadwaj, both are IFS officers, and they had a long career, and they have contributed a lot for forest management and wildlife protection. And our Pushp Jain ji, so he has worked in varied levels, worked on legal initiative for forest and environment, and worked on Yamuna, worked on wildlife related issues with WWF, and different in different capacities. So I think we are going to benefit a lot from their experience. What I'm going to do is that two things I would like to tell before starting our discussion. One is that we are going to have a first round of discussion for about 5 to 7 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on the discussion. I would like the panelists to kindly go through, explain their, first thoughts about the questions that we are going to, analyze. Secondly, for the participants, kindly put your questions in the chat box. We will be able to take up all the questions for discussion at the end of the program. So we will have the first round of discussion. Now then again, we will have the second round. Then we will be able to take up many questions. I would like to start with our first panelist, Mr. Sunayan Sharmaji. Sir, we are organizing this program in the context of COVID. We all know that whatever may be our education, our wealth, our status, everything has become irrelevant all of a sudden. Just once this lockdown came, the problem came, all of us realized that all these things are having less meaning. Environment and health, that has to be the prime importance in our lives. That we started realizing. And now, we are hiding together, away. And the environment is now, trying to recoup itself, and, it is trying to, recover in many manner. But the experts are saying that in this COVID, period, post-COVID period, so one of the major challenges of, our lives, our future is safeguarding the nature, particularly the forest and wildlife and biodiversity. So how do you view this, post-COVID context in terms of the forest and wildlife management? I would like to, ask your good self to please discuss with the help of your experiences and how do you visualize this situation in future? Over to you, sir. Mr. Sunayan Sharma.
Nicely opened, Pushji.
Yes.
I am really very happy to learn that Delhi University's legal department is organizing for the forest and environment conservation.
Yes,
it
sir.
looked a little strange to me right in the beginning, but the way Madam Kaur explained this thing, and then Mr. Tripathi also, subsequently, I could learn, and I'm happy that various other departments, I mean, other than the forest and the environment departments, they are taking so much interest in these subjects. And suddenly, it is a rosy picture. Otherwise, you see, gloomy everywhere. When the forests are cut, the environment is depleted, or the plundering in the wildlife areas is there. Always there are bad news. But well, yes, there are guards other where also, like in the university and other places.
Yes.
When we talk about the context of the COVID, rightly you have said, after a very long time, nature has now it has given such a blow that it started from the COVID, but then the larger animals, they started playing in the roads, claiming their rights. And
Yes.
you see, it can be seen both ways. It may be seen as something so injurious to the human being, and at the very same time, it reminds us that have we really taken over their place? And now they are claiming it back. the videos we are seeing every day from the European country, the Indian roads, and everywhere, the large cats, they are also coming, like the lions are coming out, the leopards are coming out, the tigers are coming out on the roads, the birds are there on the roads, everywhere. So what I understand, and of course, then you are seeing the pictures of the from the Ludhiana. You are seeing the Himalayas very clearly. And yesterday I saw on WhatsApp a picture showing the Mount Everest from Kathmandu. So well, these are the effects you can see in the plus side. But as far as the forest and wildlife conservation is concerned during this period, I understand, yes, it is both ways. Because when there is a pandemic like this, so a lot of staff has been held up at their houses. So when the staff is not there, the protection duties are suddenly slackened, and the poachers, they take advantage of these situations. But at the very same time, I will say that it is not only this pandemic, otherwise also our forests, especially you see, I always say that our forests are the open assets. So guarding an open asset is a real challenge. And then especially the wildlife areas, these are the mobile assets. So mobile asset guarding is certainly so critical. Well, if we really wish to look into the fact and how this situation can be tackled, there are certain fields we have to look into. Legal intervention is certainly one of the items we have to be. We can use it as a real tool. In the field serving for almost 40 years, I have always experienced. You see, our boys, neither they are very much trained about the legal proceedings, nor they are very well versed about the Forest Act and then the various changes and the rules they are formed time to time, and especially the case making part. Case making part is really poor. And when we arrest somebody and challan the case in the form of a complaint in the court of law, and hardly it is followed back, and what results we are getting from there, they are certainly not encouraging. Where this is very, very important to really stop the poaching. Well, you see, there are other aspects also, and I don't know, in this first round, should I carry on with the other items also or not? I'll request.
Please go ahead, sir. You can go ahead, sir. Please.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
As far as the wildlife areas are concerned, what I've experienced, you see, the forest area, how forest area is encroached. This is something very important. Forest area is encroached in several ways. One, when like an example of mining, some area is allotted for mining. Yesterday, I got a mail from Praful that around 1 square kilometer of area has been allotted to Northeast Coal Mine Limited. So, well, this kind of allotments, they certainly reduce the area, they burden the area. But there are other ways also, like the grazing impact. If the grazing impact is there, say 30% of the area is impacted of the PA by grazing, then you are reduced to only 70%. But in the books, it is always 100%. So that is a false understanding. And now this has certainly adversely affected the carrying capacity of the area. The animals will not be getting as they are shown there. And the buffer areas around the PAs, they are also so important. If they are not really really used like the shock absorber areas, they will not be of much use. The buffer area management, as I have seen so far, is not that good. And well, you see, wildlife protection is such an important and crucial part when tourism is there, and tourism is being enjoyed by only a limited class of people. Why should not this go to the buffer zone areas, to the villagers or the periphery areas? If they also get benefited out of this, this can definitely be of great importance as far as this protection part is concerned. There are other aspects also I will like to discuss in the another round. Can you please take over now?
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for highlighting these issues. Really, you have highlighted the forest encroachment issue. That is one thing that, it's really bothering all of us. And also the wildlife poaching issues. We need to, discuss more on that, sir, if possible. I would like to now go to Dr. Gobind. Dr. Gobind has been working on tiger-related issues, on several years. And also he worked a lot on the birds. His PhD itself is on birds. So I would like to discuss, I would like to, ask Dr. Gobind. So how do you view this situation, sir? The conservation of the flora and fauna, particularly the bigger animals like tigers, how they are going to be challenging in the post-COVID era, and how this is important for all our lives. So if you could kindly throw your, experience, if you can give your experience, with the help of the legal mechanisms that we have and the management practices that we have in the country, how this is really successful and what needs to be done in the context. Please go ahead, sir. Over to you.
Thanks for asking this question. I'll start with the tiger conservation.
Yes.
I used to give lectures on tiger conservation even in academies. Once I was addressing a group of Indian Revenue Service officers. One of the very young officer, he asked me, sir, we started Project Tiger in the year 1973. Still, it's not a successful project. I was shocked. I asked, please raise your hands, those who believe that it is a successful event. Very few raised hands. Then I explained the situation like this. When Project Tiger was launched, what was the population of human beings? That in 1970 it was around 65 crore or 60 crore. And the population of tiger was around 1400. That's the population. And the most of population is rural population in our country. That 70% is rural population who are dependent on fuel wood, on grass, on so many other things of the forest. So definitely now the population, as on today, the population is around 1.3 billion. That's almost double when the Project Tiger was launched. I hope you understand. You agree with me?
Yes.
With this rate of human increase, the population increase, by this time the population of tiger would have been finished. In many countries like Vladivostok area of Russia, where the human pressure is 1/10 of our country, the landscape is vast, and they do have tiger population below to our country. And we are still having around 3,000 tigers in our country. That's why Project Tiger is successful. It's not only because of department or government. It's only because of local people, because of civil societies, because of media, and because of very, very proactive judiciary. I'm very happy, just want to compliment that Law Faculty University of Delhi has initiated this program of a national webinar on forest and wildlife conservation. Now, let me come to this tiger conservation. Around 51 tigers, that's 51 tigers in the country. And most of these reserves are having very, very good forests. Many people ask, why we need to protect tiger. Why not you're not talking others? We have taken tiger as an umbrella species, as a flagship species. It's a very, very charismatic species. By protecting tiger only, we can protect whole of the flora and fauna of that particular ecosystem. That's how we have managed to protect this charismatic species along with its flora and fauna. Though there are so many other tiger reserves, so many other landscapes which are still struggling to come to that level of conservation. As far as birds are concerned, let me come to birds. We do have around 1,200, 1,300 species of birds in our country. And many of our species are highly, highly endangered, like great Indian bustards. And I'm sure that most of the birds of bustard species, they are endangered in country. Even lesser florican, Bengal florican, they are also endangered. Once I was having one session with in the biodiversity board of Uttar Pradesh. Very senior officer asked me, Govind, tell me what is the need of this Bengal florican? Then I asked another question to him only, sir, what is the need of tiger? What is the need of tiger for conservation? Then he told me, he answered me, Govind, if we protect tiger, then we are going to protect forest. I answered him, as tiger for forest ecosystem, this great Indian bustard is for grassland ecosystem. It is the first for grassland ecosystem. That's why we need to protect some birds as flagship species like great Indian bustard that we are doing in Rajasthan. So I just would like to supplement my senior colleague, my friend Sunil Sharma, who has spoken widely about this issue. The moment all of a sudden when we were locked down due to COVID, so many wild animals, they came out on the streets. You might have heard of one Malabar civet, one highly endangered species. It was on the roads. There's so many other species, so many other examples. That even these animals are wondering what happened to human beings who are everywhere. So we know that human beings are encroaching each and every sphere of wildlife or biological. I call it biosphere, and they are encroaching everywhere. They are there is poaching. There is a problem of tree felling, mining, but still our government, our people, our local people, our media and judiciary, they're trying their best to protect the remaining biological diversity of the country. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Please go ahead, sir. You want to continue or we'll take it on the next round?
I think I have been derailed. What was your question? Just please ask. What was your question?
No, I was mainly asking you, sir, with your experience. So how the wildlife management, you told about the forest management and wildlife management, how the wildlife management is going to be, in future now, and how it is important for us to, pursue that.
See, as on today, we do have so many laws, we do have policy papers, we do have laws with respect to wildlife and forest management. We do have Wildlife Protection Act, 1972, one of the finest, one of the most stringent act I have ever seen. We do have Indian Forest Act, and in Rajasthan we do have Rajasthan Forest Act, Forest Right Act, and above all, Forest Conservation Act, that is our conservation forest. But there's a problem. Making laws is easy, but implementation is always a problem. As Sunil Sharma has rightly pointed out, that there is need in our fraternity, in our frontline staff. They are not well trained in making their cases with respect to wildlife management or wildlife laws. They don't know how to book a case. Most of our frontline staff, they're not that trained with respect to making of laws, with respect to making of cases. So there is an urgent need to train our frontline staff, our frontline warriors who are managing forests. That is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing. For last couple of decades, we are facing acute shortage of manpower in our departments. Not only in state, but in whole of the country. Most of our posts of forest guards, foresters, rangers, they're lying vacant for many, many years. And you must be surprised to know that a cadre of range officer, you must be knowing range officer is an officer who is considered as the backbone of the forest department. It has not been recruited for last, I think, 30 years in Rajasthan. That's one of the biggest challenges that we are facing, especially in a state like Rajasthan. So certainly we do have a problem of managing this big resource, that is forest resource and mobile resource, as Sunesh rightly pointed out, mobile resource, that's wild animals, they are going out. It's really difficult for us to manage or to protect these animals when they go out. And we keep on talking about the human-wildlife conflict, and we keep on talking, and most of our people are facing problems because of this problem. Yesterday only, one of the young lady officers, Sudeep Kaur, she was injured during this sloth bear straying outside in Ajmer area. Just I got a message that she was seriously injured and sent to hospital, one divisional forest officer. Day to day we are facing problems of leopard straying, leopard killing by people, elephant straying in other parts of the country where the elephants are there, monkey problem, blue bull problem, tiger straying, and these problems are going to increase day by day. And the reason is very, very simple. It is the interface, human-wildlife interface. It is nothing. It's just a function of number of human beings and number of wild animals. And number of human beings are increasing, apart from our increasing infrastructure. And when this interface increases, definitely the chances of human-wildlife conflict is going to increase. It's really difficult to curtail the population of human beings or wild animals. But we have to improve our managerial skills so that we can deal with this situation of man-animal conflict. This is one of the biggest challenges that we are going to face. Okay. Professor, Pushpa.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is very, very enlightening, and you have really pinned the points. The important issues like the human-animal conflict or the issues in implementation. When we teach also in the courses in law faculty, we have environmental law as the course. That has a major component on forest, wildlife, and biodiversity at the LLB level, and also at LLM level we have this subject, environmental law, as one of the subjects. And there are many scholars who are doing PhD in environmental law. The major question that comes to our mind is that when the forest and wildlife have to be protected and biodiversity including have to be protected, what is our role as students? And because as you have rightly pointed out, when the law students and the lawyers take up the issues, the judiciary comes forward to protect it. Really its contribution is enormous, as Sunayan sir has mentioned. If the implementation of the wildlife and the forest laws in India can be seen here in the country, it's mainly due to the contribution of the judiciary, particularly the higher judiciary. So I really support that point of view. And how we can align ourselves into that is one major context, question that comes to our law students' minds. And we, teach this issue with the help of lots of cases, the success stories that we have, got in different forests. That is the major thing that we give thrust for our students. And I would like to tell that our students are also exposed to the importance of the interaction of the biodiversity in our lives. Because as you all agree, that the biodiversity which comes from the forest and wildlife is the base and source for our life. And we have a Biodiversity Act also in the country. And with the help of that, we are trying to protect all the flora and fauna, the biological resources which are useful for our developmental activities, for all kinds of day-to-day activities that we are undertaking, as well as for the industrial activities, like whether it is a pharmaceutical industry, medicinal plant is required, for cosmetic industry or health industry, all kinds of industries require the biodiversity. Most of them come from the forest. So in the not only the plants and the most of the insects and animals, they are also the target of this such utilization. Now in that case, I would like to, in the second round, I would like to ask you on this aspect, how do you view the conservation of the biodiversity in the forest and wildlife? And how do you see this access and benefit sharing concept that is now coming up, that is being implemented by the National Biodiversity Authority and the state biodiversity boards, how they are gelling with the forest management and wildlife management? That is one aspect I would like to ask our panelists in the second round. And also there is another aspect, development versus conservation is one aspect we always have a problem in understanding. Even though on the one hand we say that conservation is the top priority, but when the development comes, when a new project comes in the forest area, we forget everything, and in the negotiation normally the development wins. And how we are going to tackle this issue, that I think the real workers and the experienced experts like you will be able to throw light on this. These two issues I would like to take up in the next the round. Before going to the next round, I would like to invite Mr. Pushpesh Jain ji to discuss about his views on how conservation is important in this context, because Mr. Pushpesh ji has great experience in protecting the wildlife and the forest issues, and also he has engaged in EIA and NGT cases. And I would like to hear from you how you view this, the possibility or the challenges and the prospects of the wildlife and forest management, and how the people can be and the students can be engaged in the process as a vigilance or as supporters of conservation. Over to Mr. Pushpesh.
Thank you, Push. I am Push.
Jen.
Yes.
So to begin with, first of all, I will be little informal, and I'll address everybody by the first name. And secondly, quite a number of things have already been spoken about. First of all, by Mr. Tripathi, then Sunayan Bhai, then Dr. Govind. So what I look at it for this lockdown, the nature, I see it from a different perspective at the moment. What has happened, nature is dynamic, and this lockdown has given nature some time to recoup. We have seen a lot of videos coming out of fresh, lakes, rivers breathing up, and then, all these animals and, so kind of positive things. But how I look at it is that, during this time of lockdown, there is a lesser number of movement of people. The air is clean because of lesser industry operating and, lesser number of vehicles running. And it has provided nature some relief to recoup. And I'm sure, though there is no hard data, that many more plants must be taking root, there must be more blooming, and there must be better growth in the already existing forest crop. So, and of course, it is not limited to fauna, it is limited to flora, but it is to fauna also. So I'm sure this will give some time to nature to be better off and sustain itself for longer time. Secondly, what I was saying, this COVID and nature is kind of a interlink. I always say you cannot damage nature too much. all this development, Pushpi already spoke about the issue of development versus conservation. Nature always fights back. If you damage the nature too much, so it's going to fight back. And this is what is happening presently. The very small, invisible animal product, or whatever we call it, has tamed everybody. Earlier people used to be afraid of, tiger or lion, but now, they've been tamed by an invisible virus. So what I'm saying, it will be a lesson for people also to understand later on and not forget this, that nature can take back, whatever you do the damage, and it can do more damage. Jokingly, when this COVID thing started, I wrote that, nature says, if you kill one of mine, I'll kill 100 of you. So it is that kind of thing. And all my panelists, sometimes very funny thing happen. This COVID, and when we talk of COVID and nature, when we talk of COVID and tiger, when we talk of COVID and forest, there was just one isolated case of one tiger dying in New York Zoo, and reportedly by COVID. All of you must be aware of it. And what happened? Our bureaucracy, they are very clever, They issued a blanket order that all wild tigers are to be monitored for COVID. Now you tell me how and who will monitor wild tigers for COVID? So, that is becoming too hyper and too passing of the buck. So these kind of things are there. So nature is giving us lessons which we should be careful to listen, we should be careful to see, we should be careful to observe and follow in future. Now, some of the negative aspects have already been spoken about by our faculty and our panelists. Poaching, tree felling, encroachment. And I would just point out few very specific examples which have come to my notice in this regard, and which are very damaging and which are, very disheartening. There is a case of poaching in Achanakmar Tiger Reserve of a leopard. It was caught in the camera trap, and the leopard was found with a snare in its neck. And then there were people seen with bows and arrows, and this is one specific case of poaching. Then there are cases of poaching reported in Himalayas, because of less number of officials being available. So there is an increase in poaching in Himalayas also. Then specifically the cases of forest clearance. Some cases have come to notice in Chhattisgarh regarding the forest clearance to get patta later on under Forest Right Act. Then there is one very, very specific case of encroachment in Madhya Pradesh. This happened in Nepanagar area of Burhanpur district. There are clear pictures of large chunk of forest being cleared, fields being created, huts have been erected, wells have been dug, and these are all very disheartening things. But which is of major concern of law faculty and all of us is what is going to happen in future because of COVID. I am sure, and government has already, central government and state governments have already started raising their neck, and they're saying they will issue clearance to 500 coal mines without much restriction, without any much regulation. So what is going to happen? So this is a very, very serious issue, and already for law faculty members and students, there is a very important issue of law. This is Environment Impact Notification 2020, which is coming up, and the draft has already been circulated, and comments need to be submitted by 30th June. So I would request all of you, everybody, you're talking of what action we should take. So we should all look at that draft, and we should all formulate our comments, and we should all pressurize the government of India not to dilute Environment Protection Act, because already we are suffering so much. Nature is dying, when the forests are being encroached and given away to mining and other industries. So we have to safeguard all those things. So, I feel in totality, we are learning a lot of lessons from this COVID and its impact on forest and wildlife. Any other thing?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I would like to also ask you that you worked on the insect pollinators. So could you please throw light on the insect pollinators? How this is so relevant in this present context?
Thank you, Kush. This issue is very close to my heart, and we have been in discussion with Worldwide Fund for Nature for taking up this thing in a bigger way. What is happening? The insects are the most ignored wildlife in our country, and the amount of impact of insect decline cannot be stated in words. There are more than 20,000 species of insect pollinators. Insect pollinator does not mean bee only. I mean, just explaining it. It may include wasps also. It may insect beetles also. It may include butterflies also, and a large number of those kind of fauna is there. And some of them are very specific to very specific species. So what has happened unobserved, attention was being given to this issue, and conference on parties of this Convention on Biodiversity Act, Convention on Biological Diversity, they took up this issue in the very beginning, two decades ago. They first formulated one, program of watching the insect scene in 2000, and that program ran up to 2017. There were a lot of learning, there were a lot of experiment, there were a lot of research, largely but in Western countries. So what has emerged, for example, I will say very briefly, a WWF paper, recent paper of 2018. It states the flowering plants in wild areas ranging from 78 to 94% are pollinated by animal pollinators. And animal pollinators, I mean, includes largely insect pollinators. There are few, primates and others who also help in, a few birds, but it is largely insect pollinators. So that is the kind of, dynamics which is involved with insects. So, very briefly speaking, what are the kind of issues which the insects are facing? We talk of pesticides generally, the pesticide issue, but it is not only the pesticide issue. There are a large number of issues, habitat fragmentation. There may be, change in floral scenes. There may be decline on some floral species on which certain species of insects survive. So those kind of things are there. And lastly, on this aspect, I would touch upon, what is the present scene. The last, conference of parties, Hope of CBD, the 14th one in 2018, they took up the another program and they have charted out an action plan. The earlier one was the research, assessment, and all that, and now it is the program of implementation. So, I mean, anybody can look at all that program on the internet. The details are there who are keen. But the four elements, major elements of action plan are, what are the kind of policies and strategy which each country should take up? How should there be field implementation activities? What kind of research and monitoring and assessment is required? And what kind of civil society and private enterprise action is required? These are the four elements of this action plan. And I will close this by saying that, we should look at this action plan, and at our level and our officers level and our students level, our law faculty level, we should see how we can chip in to get this action plan moving. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's really, it's a feast to listen to you, particularly when you linked with the Convention on Biological Diversity. and the related issues of the conservation, particularly the insect pollinators also. Sir, just building on this point, so let us move to the next round of discussion. In this discussion, I request all the panelists to take around 3 to 5 minutes now, so that we can reserve some time for the students' questions. So I would like to ask, just connecting with the Convention on Biological Diversity, because the whole framework of the forest and wildlife, even though we have got the laws much before the Indian Forest Act, it was enacted in 1927, and even before the Convention on Biological Diversity in 1980 itself, we got the Forest Conservation Act, and the 1972 the Wildlife Protection Act. These are all fantastically working, but still a full package kind of the international commitment came through the Convention on Biological Diversity, and which almost all the countries in the world have become the parties. India is one of the major parties, and it is enthusiastically it is implementing the convention. And for the purpose of this implementation, we have come out with the Biodiversity Act, that in fact it supplements the Forest Act and Wildlife Act. It is not going in a different direction. It is only supplementing and complementing the efforts of the Forest and Wildlife Act. I would like to ask you here in this context, in 2010, the international community has come out with Aichi biodiversity targets, and now that is being augmented with the help of the Sustainable Development Goals, where we are trying to look at the biodiversity conservation, the forest and wildlife management in a very holistic manner. So I would like to have your views how we are proceeding in achieving these targets, the targets of the forest conservation, wildlife conservation, and the comprehensively the biodiversity conservation. Number one. Number two, as I asked you earlier, hinted earlier, the development versus conservation, because in most of the times we have this issue that we are, even though the sustainable development as a concept we have developed and we are moving towards implementing it, but most of the times we find the tussle, we find the conflict still there, and we are both the parties. Sustainable development is a concept which wanted to show a win-win situation, but that's not in most of the times. So how we are reconciling this second one? The third small question I would like to ask is, we have developed the concept of CAMPA, the compensatory afforestation and management plan, and how this is utilized for conservation. So these three things, if you could highlight briefly, that will help all of us in understanding in a holistic manner. I would like to invite Sunayan Sharmaji to respond to this first. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Pushbhai.
Yes, sir.
Well, your question number 1 and 2, to me they seem same. I'll explain how.
Yes.
Well, you see, man-animal conflict or development conservation conflict, it is same thing. When you go for development for whom? It is always in the name of man. So development versus conservation is always any man versus conservation or man versus animal. Dr. Bharadwaj has very rightly and in detail he has explained the way the man-animal conflict has been growing on, and it has been gripping our protection strategies. It has been impacting adversely our protection strategies, and it has become one of the serious most challenges before the foresters, the conservationists, the wildlifers. Well, you see, as far as this man-animal conflict is concerned, when you talk about the totality of the conservation strategy, I will say, why not you include the buffer area plus the area adjoining to that buffer area, I mean the revenue areas, to the extent of the 5 kilometer radius around the buffer areas, and make a comprehensive plan, then it will be more suited for that purpose. I give you an example. The buffer areas in all our PAs, the buffer areas, they are not being given the due importance as they should have been. From the core area, the animals are moving into the buffer area. The buffer area is a multiple use area. So to be used by the animals to the extent that they don't infringe the rights of the villagers. And they don't venture into the villages. At the very same time, the villagers, they are also allowed to use those areas to the extent they don't venture into the core areas. So buffer area is a multiple use area. If the buffer areas are used properly, if they are maintained properly, then not many problems can be solved through that. And well, you see, as I was telling you, the development versus conservation is also the same way. I look at the development. I give you an example from Sariska Tiger Reserve. 3 years back, there was a project of national highway. One extended national highway was to be constructed to pass through the Sariska area. The moment we learned about this, we raised this point and talked to the concerned authorities in the government of India. They diverted me to the National Highway Office of Jaipur. They diverted me to the PWD office of Jaipur. And unfortunately, none of them was able to share or was willing to share the map and the other details. Well, you see, what I perceive, this is certainly not good. Had they shared the information with me, I could have, I'm not against the development. You see, development is also for the men, and development will always take place. The only thing I talked to the chief engineer there, if you share that information with me, I will like to see if there can be some alternate route also. If the alternate route can be available, then it serves our purpose. And if not, then well, you can assess yourself. Is it really that much essential? I have seen the other national highways also being constructed. The old national highway being renovated into or extended into the 6th lane or 8th lane. What they do, they cut away all the huge old trees. Is it really required? If it is a must, just go for it. But have you really considered? Can't you make 2 roads parallel at some distance? If road can be made at some distance, then naturally they can also serve the purpose. But no, they don't consider. So that kind of development certainly is not a development. And that is why we say it is not a sustainable development. We should have a comprehensive approach about these things, and then you can go for developing the area also in the interest of the people, and you really serve the interest of the people, not at the cost of the environment and the wildlife. Now, well, coming back to the conservation issue again, the protection part, as Dr. Bharadwaj said rightly, we have such a serious dearth of the able in our areas, very, very serious dearth. From guard to ranger, there is no recruitment. Not only in Rajasthan, in most of the states, this is a situation. And not only this, you see, the land record holding department of, the section of our departments is so poor. There are not the surveyors, there are not the amines. So now if the land record holding is also not there properly, then how are we going to protect our lands, especially the enforcement part? Well, there are issues like Pushji mentioned about the Kempa. Well, Kempa story is okay. I understand the Conservation Act says that in lieu of the land, you have to give the lands, and the lands are to be further brought under green rule. Plantations are to be made on that. But you see, the plantations can never replace the forest. Forest and plantations are two different things. So forests are developed in thousands and thousands of years. With plantations, you can grow the monoculture anywhere, anytime. Furthermore, the plantations, who is monitoring? Who is monitoring? What happens to a plantation after 5 years? After 10 years, after 15 years, after 30 years? Has it matured or shifted into or graded into a forest? No. So that way, of course, as far as the data is concerned, it can really help Forest Survey of India to calculate that, well, this much of forest cover has increased in the form of the plantations, but that has not gone into. So, well, these are certain issues which always struck my mind. And one thing more I would like to add to what Dr. Bharadwaj said about the protection part. You see, not only the manpower done, but the cooperation of the district authorities, especially the police department, it seriously lacks. And you see, the forest officials are equipped with lathis, dandas. And now if you use a danda, what happens? I tell you a story of Sariska. It was somewhere 94 or so. Three of my forest staff people from Siliguri area, they learned about a poacher. They caught that poacher, and the poacher, he slit his throat. Of course, partially. But the boys, they got so frightened seeing the blood that they ran away from there. Now, this fellow, he went to the police station and lodged a complaint against those guys. The forest guards, attempt to murder case was registered against them. The villagers, they demonstrated that person on the court to everybody that you see, Suren Sharma and party, they are not allowing our cattle inside and they are killing our people also. Like this, and you see, when I met the Superintendent Police there, a nice guy that time, he said, well, you see, we are with you, but this fellow should not die. And I do, this fellow died. He said, okay, this fellow should not die. I pressurized the SP from top to bottom, and only then that fellow could be taken back to the hospital from where he had run away, then taken to the Jaipur hospital, got back, and only then it could be, to some extent, could be solved. This is man-animal conflict. And well, you see, where we are, we don't have even any kind of help from the department or from the police, who is said to be there, armed for all the departments of the government, but they are not there. So, well, you see, these you can say that there are challenges from outside, and there are equally big challenges from inside the government and the departments.
Yes, sir.
So, well, I understand if we get a time during the debate, I will like to participate.
Right. It's really fantastic, sir. You brought the real experience also there, so that we could understand how in the field this functions. Because it is very easy to say theoretically, conservation is so important and we have to cooperate. But when it comes to life, then the people react differently. So that is really very useful to understand this, sir. So may I invite Dr. Bharadwaj to share his views on these three questions.
See, with respect to this CAMPA implementation, and this was made only after this Forest Conservation Act. And I think, let me share it with you that as on today, I am not holding any wildlife wing or not managing any forest. Today, I am working like, you should call me as a contractor, forest contractor. I am looking up as a nodal officer for reviewing the cases under FCA. As on today, I'm nodal officer for FCA, so I'm dealing with diversion of cases under FCA as on today. But as Surenji has rightly pointed out that definitely then sometimes district administration was not giving help for our poor staff. And I have seen, and in just 1 year, during this tenure as a nodal officer, there is too much pressure for the clearance of these cases. My DFOs are fighting hard to follow all the guidelines and rules of FCA, but they are still getting pressure. Jaldi karo, abhi karo, kisi bhi tarike se karo. Most of the time, the user agencies like National Highway Authority of India, they have to do completely their work. They have to make their road from jungle. We keep on asking them, why don't you have any alternate road? Whenever I review any project from which is being sent by any PWD department or NHI, I always find alternate route, but they never opt for alternate route. They want only straight road and passing through the jungle. That's the biggest challenge that we are facing. And most of our forest areas are being fragmented day by day. We do have hardly 9% of the area in Rajasthan under forest area. Only 9%. I keep on talking to umbrella of Wildlife Protection Act. There's some small insects, small denizens. These are your pollinators. I do agree with him. Let me quote one example that in most of tiger reserves, we see tiger as a only performance indicator. Bhai tiger बढ़ रहा है तो बढ़िया आपका जंगल चल रहा है. And I'm quoting example of Sariska Tiger Reserve. As on today, we are having 17 tigers, including one cub. So the population was 0 in 2004. Today we are having 17 tigers, and we are happily saying that it's doing very well. Okay, I'm a government servant, I will say, but what I did in the year 2018, I compared the imageries, satellite imageries of 2008 and 2015. I was astonished to analyze that around 1,600 hectares of forest area has been degraded and lost. Population increase of tiger doesn't mean that this forest increase. We should have other performance indicators, not only tiger. For example, honeybees. We should have the status survey of honeybees. This is a part of our biodiversity target. This is one of the strategic goals that will assign in HE biodiversity targets. So what we did, I'm just quoting example, I'm not saying what we have done. My staff did a survey of whole of these honey hives in Sariska Tiger Reserve. We found 242. Nobody was knowing that there's something called a honey hive, jiska survey we karte hain. We keep on talking about only on tiger. We should have that lens, that observation eye. We have to make data of these species. Otherwise, we will lose so many species that we even don't know. So, as far as Campa plantations are concerned, Sunay Sharma ji has rightly pointed out, we don't know how we are monitoring, what is the fate of our plantations, what should be done. I am firmly supporting his views. Being in the government, I have asked my officers, my seniors, and even we are making a sort of database management of all these plantations that we have done, at least in Rajasthan, in last 30-40 years under Campa. What is the status of that? And we need to identify that area. And we even don't know what is the current status of that area, which is known as NFL, non-forest land, which has been received in lieu of diverting our forest. So there should be a national database at the country level, and there should be independent body monitoring this Campa plantations and the land which has been hand over to Forest Department in diversion of the Forest Conservation Act. So these are some of my views, some of my observations with respect to this question, this topic, HE biodiversity target. As you said that there may be some questions from students, so I am stopping here. I think my battery is problem in my mobile. I hope am I audible?
Yes, sir. Very much audible. Very much audible. Okay. It's very clear also. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Wonderful. Yeah. I think, this really opens our eyes. It gives lots of clarification to our understanding that how we are implementing the laws and how the developmental pressures are really skewing the whole operation. That we are able to understand. I think that our law students as well as the faculty members will be able to receive the maximum benefit out of this discussion. I would like to invite Mr. Push Jainji to share his views on these issues.
Thank you. Listen, there are three things which you have asked for. One is development versus conservation. Another is Biodiversity Act, and lastly Campa thing. So I will present here my points like bullet points only, and I won't go into that much of detail. First of all, development versus conservation. I would be really blunt on this aspect. Whose development are we talking about? I mean, this is the development of the corporate world. This is not development of people we are talking about. Development is what kind of development is taking place. Everybody is pointing out, mining. Sunan Bhai pointed about mining. Bhartwaji has pointed out about, all this, roads and everything. All these are, infrastructure projects, and they are money spinners. They all fill the coffers of the, I would be blunt, of the administration, of politicians, of the corporate world. And man for whom the development is supposed to be there is only suffering out of it. So this is one thing. Now, when we talk about the one major issue of development versus conservation comes regarding coal mining. The coal mining generally happens in the forest area. So a lot of forest area is diverted, and this is not only the forest area which is diverted. It is the whole lot of impact of transportation and other things. People move, and all those are developing the whole forest area. As Sunan Bhai is pointing out, there may be disturbance in 2 hectares, but the actual impact may be 100 hectares. So coal is such a critical issue for the forest concern. Here, I won't go into much detail, but I will say only one thing. There are enough coal mines already existing which have huge reserves. But out of greed, they are asking for new and new mines. And along with this, I like to flag this issue, which in the news is already being circulated. They are saying there 500 coal mine leases. So these are things which we all should look into more detail and go into and fight all those things. Now development, another very, very critical offshoot in the context of wildlife of development is the elephant. The whole area of East India and Central India is disturbed because of this development. So many people are dying because of this so-called man-animal conflict. This is not a man-animal conflict. This has all been created. People have been moved from Odisha, and all these elephants and the forest have been damaged. And these guys are running around here in Central India from one area to the other area, and there is a clashes. They will kill people, and ultimately wildlife will be blamed as the culprit. But the major culprit is the development and the corporate world. So this is so far as development is concerned. Now coming to Biodiversity Act. Biodiversity Act in India was enacted in 2002. And you being, law faculty people, you will know what was the state of implementation of Biodiversity Act until, maybe 2-3 years ago. It was nil. I mean, the department was there and hardly any activity was happening. It was only one case instituted in NGT and facilitated by LIFE, our organization at that point of time. And, after that, the whole department woke up, and as a result of that, one basic thing has happened, that is creation of biodiversity committees. Now we have a very large number of biodiversity management committees, PMC, and as a result, furthermore, with the support of the department, Not many, people's biodiversity registers have been created. So now, in a way, Biodiversity Act has started moving. I'm not saying nothing is happening, but things may move now to a better situation. We need lot more clarity. We need lot more guidelines, and those kind of things are required. And regarding, when we talk of cases in NGT, I would like to flag only two cases. One is regarding, as Dr. Bhagwat has been pointing out over the roads. There was one famous case of NH7. NH7 was a very big issue because the tiger reserves involved in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. Dr. Bhagwat, you know very well. So this case was being fought in NGT with a very difficult situation. Now National Highway Authority raised its hand that we don't have money. We cannot spend that much of money. See, I mean, if you want infrastructure, if you want development, you have to do diversion of the road. You have to develop underpasses and overpasses. So as a result of that NGT case, there was about, I think, I'm not forgetting the number, but about 7 underpasses have been created for wildlife. And this may be certainly of benefit, and more may be required to be done, Dr. Bhagwat, And likewise, one case which went to the Supreme Court was related to river linking. This was a famous case of Ken-Betwa river linking. And this started way back in 2003, the whole issue and everything. And this would have been a major disaster for the Panna Tiger Reserve, in particular in Madhya Pradesh and other areas. We supported the people who were fighting this case, and ultimately, the Supreme Court supported committee. They realized that it should be a disaster. And presently, this is also almost a self thing. So these are the kind of things which is happening. And in the context of Campa, already something has been said. And Pushpi already pointed out, Campa is supposed to be for deforestation and all those things. Already, Campa funds reports were coming of Campa fund misuse in many of the states in developing forest rest houses, buying vehicles. And I'm not going into much detail, but what is worrying now regarding Campa? There has been a notification only recently by central government that Campa funds, besides not using for forest reforestation, will be used for COVID-19 activities. So this will be, a big challenge, how to, save our Campa funds for forest. So they have issued direction, these funds can be used for COVID activities. So these are the kind of challenges we are going to face in all these, fields, and a lot more problem can come. And this will be a challenge, particularly for Dr. Govind. There will be lot more cases of forest diversion coming up, and he will be pressurized to just sign those.
No.
Sorry.
Nobody can pressure. I keep on fighting with these guys.
Sorry for being blunt, but this is the kind of situation we are in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're right, sir.
Yes.
So,
let me.
You want to add some points, sir?
Yeah, I just would like to add, push Jen, sir.
Yes.
This, just showing you a scenario. How an APCA nodal officer is being interviewed during this one APCA meeting. Chief Secretary in front. There are 3 to 4 additional Chief Secretaries, one CGM maybe or a Chief Engineer, and only one guy who's talking for the forest. That is only the forest officer. That is APCA officer. Rest others, all bureaucrats or other people, that talk only for development. Only one officer or one person who will talk for forest. That is only one, either APCA nodal officer or that forest officer. And one person versus 10 persons is very, very difficult. But still, our people are fighting.
Yes. Thank you, sir. This is a reality, in fact.
I'd like to add one.
Reality.
Can I speak one thing?
Please.
Can I speak one minute?
Yes.
What I'm saying, there is one more, Govind, there is one more person with you.
Yes, sir.
There is one more person with you, that is Pushp Jain.
Yes, sir.
For last 8 years,
Yes,
we have been challenging many forest clearances in NGT, and many of them have been set aside also. This NH7 case is also related to forest clearance,
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank
Wonderful.
you, sir.
Well,
I always feel your back of my back.
hello, Push.
Sunayan, sir. Yeah.
I'd
Sunayan,
like
sir.
to add on this point, just to intervene here. Like rightly, both of these, my colleagues, they all briefed about. To add to them, I'll say the time when the case of mining was being fought in the Supreme Court, you see, being the field director, I was one of the respondents, and I was the one who wanted the mines be closed. Now,
Yes.
now look at my situation. I was the respondent. Officially, my duty was to challenge the litigant, and the litigant said that the mines should be closed. Now, officially, I was supposed to oppose him, and my basic duty was to really stop the mining. And now, naturally, you can understand what kind of path had I to take. And ultimately, I took the right path, and we could afford to get them closed also in '93. Now, during that period, and even after that, there were several meetings in the government of Rajasthan and in central government. Every time there was one insistence that the area of the forest should be again and again demarcated, surveyed and demarcated. They were saying that wrongly these have been shown into forest, these are not the forest areas. So they wanted them to be taken out of the forest areas. You see, the point I was going to make here is, in every meeting, whether chaired by industries minister, chaired by a development minister, chaired by a finance minister, in every meeting, the opening dialogue was, the forest people, they are against the development. Well, how come the forest people are against the development? You have to understand what is development. Like Push rightly said, development for people. So you have to look into it comprehensively. Then you will understand forest is also for people. So forest and wildlife conservation not to be looked separately from the people. It is certainly primarily for the people. Then how come it goes against the development? The only thing is, your development model, if that is against the conservation, then you can see. So, well, my point is that the forest officers, they should not be treated like the villains.
Right. Right. Very right.
In the development scenario of the country, the first 3 All India services, it is one of the first 3 All India services. So, well,
Yes, sir. Yes.
okay, now hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Sir, really thank you very much for all the 3 panelists for the very candid responses and your observations. Pushp Jain sir has, I think, here. Sir, have you completed? I think, we have to go to the questions. I would like to really thank you for the provoking responses, that really, made the other panelists to contribute to your, responses. Pushp Jain sir, you can take, another minute if you want to complete your.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Talking about this Sariska case, I have been very closely, involved from that very moment when the case started, and it is, hats off. It is hats off to the Hatwala. It is a model case for all the forest officers to, read and learn how to do it. So I will finish it on that point only. But this kind of challenge can be faced. Is an example. Sunayan Sharma is there.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Please go ahead, sir.
I'll just make only one point for the biodiversity sake. Like Dr. Bharadwaj said, and earlier Push Jain have said, you see, in our areas, especially the tiger areas, it is only, now everybody is asking about tiger. Like Govindji rightly said, it is not only the tiger, there are other species also very important. And you see, the radio collaring of the tiger. I have always been opposing this radio collaring of the tiger. Maybe it was the first tiger which I used a radio collared tiger for the reintroduction of the tigers world over, first time in Seriska in 2008. But I am of a very strong opinion that it should be used only for a very, very limited period of time. Otherwise, this tiger-centric administration and this tiger-centric approach of the administration is going to mar the interest in other species. Like rightly he said, what about honeybees? Now, who will bother about honeybees? If you are tracking the tiger from the hilltop with the use of the antenna, then naturally you are not walking into the jungle. If you are not walking,
sir, we are also getting reports that the number of leopards and cheetah are also affected. That we need to concentrate more on that.
Well, you see,
not only tigers.
You see, if you are not going into jungle, you are not seeing anything. You are not seeing poachers.
Yes.
You are not seeing the forest being depleted. You are not seeing the fire ruining your jungle. You are seeing nothing. You are just going onto the hilltop, using the antenna, using the GPS or VHF system, and you are reporting even up to the Delhi. Everybody is happy. 17 tigers, it's okay. But no, that should not be the approach. In that case, we will certainly miss the biodiversity. If the biodiversity conservation is your priority, then you have to come out of this species-specific approach. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for all the panelists. Now we are going to the question answer session now. As we have already crossed the time limit. We wanted to complete it by 6 o'clock. But if I request all the panelists to be here, another 10 minutes, will it be fine, sir?
Yes.
Okay, 10 minutes. Okay.
Very good, sir. Another 10 minutes. So now we will take selective questions. Dr. Vikesh will be taking up. Sir, before that, I would like to just add one line. After the question answer session, I'm going to request the panelists to give one short sentence as a key message, as a takeaway, in relation to how conservation matters in the post-COVID era. So what is your suggestion or a key message for that? That if you can give one line, so that will be the great punch mark for all of us, sir. Over to Dr. Vikesh for the questions.
Thank you, sir. So I must congratulate as well as a deep sense of gratitude to all the speakers. With this, sir, we have been talking about this debate of nature and development. We must focus on development.
Post-COVID.
Day before yesterday, I was reading a report from World Economic Forum. They are apprehending that the countries like India, Madagascar, and a few other countries, where because of this COVID-19, post-COVID-19 recovery, they are facing a lot of migration. The labor migration, the people are migrating from all urban areas to the rural areas, more specifically. Considering this issue, and having in mind, sir, in state of UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, we have a lot of forest area. So the cut it side, the real apprehension that is coming before us is there may be increase in deforestation as well as poaching activities. Because people are going back to the jungles, they will be definitely increasing their habitats. So there might be a surge to the activities of deforestation as well as poaching activities. Furthermore, it can be also substantiated by that very recently the environmental investigating agencies report as well as the Wildlife Protection Society of India they have reported vehemently that the Indian, the illegal products, tiger products are being sent to the Chinese market. India is one of the biggest contributor in the Indian illegal poaching market of the China. So I would like to be very quick response on these issues, the post-COVID challenges that the forest as well as the wildlife, not only the tigers, those they are going to face, and what will be the impact of this migration over the forest life as well as the wildlife.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Well, Dr. Tripathi, what I understand, certainly this is going to impact, but not mentionably. Because you see, because of the LPG gas being made available at a very, very large scale, the requirement for the fodder for the fuel wood has certainly reduced. But of course, as far as the poaching of the wildlife is concerned, this is going to be definitely a matter of challenge in the coming days of time. Thank you.
Dr. Vikesh, go to the next question. Oh, okay. Well, Pushp Jain ji wants to add a point. Yeah.
My point is that, it depends how long the COVID-19 continues. Because, these people who have migrated, they will find it very difficult to survive in village. And if the COVID subsidizes, so many of them may come back. That is one thing. Secondly, all these people have become, used to urban life. And they may not interfere with forest that much. But of course, as Sunan Bhai has pointed out, poaching can certainly increase. That is the one. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
The another interesting question is by an anonymous student. He is interested to know about the story by the Govind Sagar sir with regard to the that tiger and village story, which you have been awarded the award in state of Rajasthan, sir.
Oh, okay. The story of tiger attack you want to hear, students. See, when you pass out from academy, I passed out from Indian Forest Service, Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy in the year 1997. We passed out on 16th of May, got married 26th May, and I joined Bundi Forest Division on 15th of June. Newly in the service, highly arrogant. There's no professional competence, only bookish knowledge. And all of a sudden, on 30th June, I got a message that one tiger has stayed in a village called Dablana. I'm very excited to see a tiger in a village. Okay, so many times seen tiger in zoo, but never seen a tiger in wild. So I went to that area in Bundi. So before going, I took one revolver. You just imagine what kind of professionalism I was having. I'm telling, it's like an arrogance or an unprofessionalism. I took a .32 revolver from office, from store, and went to that area. It's very interesting. Never seen tiger in wild. Went to that area without any veterinary officer, no support staff, no tranquilization guns. When I reached that area, around 20 kilometers from district headquarters, and being this sort of arrogance, I asked, where is the tiger, to the villagers. Said, tiger is behind those bushes. We don't know what's the right position. You might have seen many movies, senior officers always lead in front. So I was senior most officer. I was leading front, one SHO, 3 constables, 1 range officer, 3 to 4 forest guards were behind me, and I was looking for the tiger. So I was looking at left side, but tiger had already shifted his position to right side. I was peeping and going, looking at left side. All of a sudden, one of guards shouted, "Sir, Vora," and they ran away. And the moment they ran away, I asked them, "Where's the tiger? Where's the tiger?" But nobody was there behind me. The moment I turned my head towards right side, a full-grown tiger in a crouching position. That was the time, for the first time in my life, I saw a tiger, live tiger in wild. And I was totally alone. It all happened in a fraction of seconds. Tiger jumped over me. It literally crashed on my back and I fell down. That revolver broke my ribs, 3 ribs. And my shoulder was totally gone. It was like paralyzed. And the position was that the tiger was on my back, like in a mounting position. You might have seen the movies with the tiger with a kill and tiger panting. I still remember, I could feel whiskers and foul smell from that tiger. I don't know what happened. Tiger was on my back for 5 to 7 seconds. He just left me and went to the same position. I was alive. I was feeling blood jetting out from my back and going to belly. I don't know what happened after 5 to 6 minutes. The tiger went away. It left me behind, and the villagers came shouting, "DFO to Gyo, Chota DFO to Gyo." That was local language. They literally dragged me from that area, brought to hospital, and our operation was done. 47 stitches on my back, and ribs were all. It took a complete 1 year for healing. But it's a massive message that we should not go in jungle without any preparation. We should have professional competence, and we should always go with full equipment. That's what I have learned in that incident. And after that, I have seen more than tiger 1,000 times. That's my story, the real story.
Sir, it is a very, very brave incident, sir. I think, we must congratulate you.
No,
and,
the tiger was very brave, not me.
No, sir. No, you had the courage. You had the courage to intervene at the time. And, it is because of the officers like you and Sunayan sir also, the kind of, people who have taken the lead to, take initiatives, either for conservation or to protect people or to, resolve the conflicts. And this is really telling story that how it really helps us in moving forward. Congratulations to you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Sir, Pushpain, sir. Pushpain.
Govind, I would like to add to the question. Please tell us about your book also.
Okay, sir. So what happened? Thereafter, I did my diploma in PG diploma in wildlife management in Dehradun. I went to that area and came back after serving Tonk. I was posted in Ranthambore for 3.5 years. Based on my observation on tiger, especially Machli and her cubs, and on all the problems that we are facing, I wrote a book called Tracking Tigers in Ranthambore in 2008. The book was published by Oriole Publishing, and all the royalties of that book have already been donated to Ranthambore Foundation, Ranthambore Star Welfare Society. So that's one book that I have written. Thereafter, I could not find time to write for other books, but I am continuously writing papers and articles, popular articles of birds and other wildlife management. That's what I've seen. Thank you, sir.
Vikesh, can you go to the next question quickly? We'll take
sir,
1 or 2 questions more, not more than that.
This
One
will be
question.
The last question.
More.
I think.
Yes.
See, sir, students are interested with regard to the. In 2008, just immediately 2 years before your immediate retirement, Sunayan sir, there was a unique kind of translocation of the tigers to the Sariska. And apart from that, another challenging thing happened, the control of mining in the tiger reserves. So the students want to be the real-time story by your real experience, sir, on these 2 issues. One is the marble mining, the another is with regard to that tiger translocations.
Well, regarding the mining, it got stopped in 93, in fact, it was in my earlier tenure. I was director of Sariska in my earlier tenure from 91 to 96. So that was the actually time when it happened. And I've narrated to you in brief about that. I was a respondent, and well, the entire government, this state government and the central government, both are on my back to push me down, not to support me. And the way we fought, even to the extent that my lawyer from the side of the government, he threatened me for bringing a case of criminal breach of trust against me. So, well, under those circumstances, we succeeded in getting them closed. Anyway, I can't detail out all those things. And little bit of that I have mentioned already in my book also, which is on Sariska. Govind is smiling, he must have read all that. And the tiger reintroduction, that is also something very, very unique thing. You see, when a tiger comes to another area, is very, very agitated animal. And tigers have a very sound memory also. So they always try to go back to their homeland. And of course, they don't know the direction. So whatever direction clicks to their mind, they pick that direction. And you see, our jungles are fragmented. Like Govindji was telling and Push was also telling, these are all so fragmented. You run for 10 kilometers and you are out of the jungle. Now, when the tiger is running for its homeland, crossing the jungle, coming into the people, that means again a conflict with people. Either it will kill some human being or cattle, and in both the conditions, our project will be failing. Because there were people, pretty powerful for the commercial reasons. They didn't want Sariska to come up against the Ranthambore and not to share the tiger tourism, which is very prominent thing these days. So, our problem was that tiger was to be kept contained in that area. Now, keeping the tiger contained in that area, you compare with today's scenario, when after the COVID story, and everybody is running, and the governments are trying very hard to keep them contained in the areas, it is not possible for the government. Now, how a tiger or tigers can be contained by a handful of staff, and in a rugged area of Sariska, all entire hilly terrain of Aravali's, it was very, 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 very difficult task. But of course, we could do that. Very successfully we did that. And once we did one tiger, then we got the second tiger. And of course, that paved the way for other tigers to come. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Excellent.
Let me supplement just 1 minute. I think the incident that I am going to share with you, and especially like my students, just to supplement what Suresh Sharma sir has already said, that tiger is really, when it goes from its territory, its behavior totally different. I joined Sariska Tiger Reserve in 2017 as a director. And the day I joined, I got a message that one of the young tiger, ST13, had gone outside. And it was living in a very small area near a village for last 7 to 8 months. Do you have time?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. It's very interesting. I think people like it. Many attempts were failed to localize that animal and brought it back. So what should be done? I was very curious because the monsoons were approaching, and during monsoons, it's really difficult to track that tiger. We won't get pagmas because of rains. So what we did, I asked one of my officers, why don't we use urine of female tigress? So we call this process as honey trap method. So we brought some urine from a zoo in Jaipur and sprinkled that urine, sprayed that urine at the last exit point of the same tiger which went outside. And we made a trail to an open area. After just 24 hours, that tiger reached that open area and we were able to tranquilize, brought it back. That ST3 is the father of now 5 tigers. And right now, I am writing an article on this same tiger honey trap method of bringing that
same back to Sariska Tiger Reserve. It's very interesting. We are using so many methods in jungle. कोई भी मिलता है, जिस जुगाड़ बोलते हैं. We use all methods for protection of wildlife. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Actually, sometimes, students used to ask us why we are giving more importance to tiger or elephant. Where we have projects like Project Tiger, Project Elephant. Why we do? And we used to tell them that, this is not just, conservation of one animal. If you, this is a symbol.